Have you ever noticed how people stop appreciating you the moment you try too hard? The more you chase, beg, or explain, the less they value you. But the instant you go silent, the moment you stop running after their approval, everything changes. Suddenly, they notice the strength they overlooked. It's like a game controller with jammed buttons, discarded in frustration, replaced without a thought. But when the new one breaks, when the real challenge comes, suddenly the old one is remembered for its quiet reliability. Only then do they realize the value they dismissed too quickly. Or think of a leader who never begs for recognition, never chases attention. Yet, when chaos erupts, every eye turns to him for direction. That's the power of silence. It doesn't demand, it doesn't explain, yet it proves its strength when it matters most. Because while others are busy expecting you to prove yourself, you have a choice. Keep giving away your dignity, or hold your ground in silence. And when you hold it, that's when your silence becomes louder than words, when they start realizing they misjudged you. So how do you turn silence into your greatest weapon? How do you make the world respect you without chasing, begging, or explaining a single word? Stay until the end, because once you learn this, you'll never give your power away again. Let's get started. Number 1. Silence protects your dignity. Let's talk about one of the most overlooked but powerful truths. Silence is not weakness, it's strength. When you stop chasing people, stop begging for their attention, and stop over-explaining yourself, you're sending a message louder than words ever could. Your value isn't negotiable. You're no longer putting your worth in someone else's hands. Instead, you're showing that you respect yourself enough to walk away from anything that doesn't respect you back. Here's the truth. When you chase, beg, or try to justify yourself to someone who doesn't value you, you're actually lowering your own dignity. You're telling them, you decide if I'm worthy. But the moment you choose silence, everything changes. You flip the power dynamic. You're no longer the one reaching out desperately for validation. You're the one standing firm, calm, untouchable. And that quiet strength is far more intimidating than any argument or plea could ever be. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Marcus Aurelius said, "He who respects himself is immune to the disrespect of others." Think about that. Disrespect only has power if you give it attention. But when you remain silent, when you refuse to beg or explain, you prove that no one else controls your value. Your silence becomes a shield, protecting your dignity from those who would try to diminish it. Instead of reacting to their games, you rise above them. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him David, was in a relationship where he always felt like he had to prove his worth. Whenever his partner pulled away, he'd chase harder, sending messages, making calls, explaining why he deserved to be treated better. The more he chased, the colder she became. Until one day, David decided to stop. No arguments, no long speeches, just silence. At first, she tried to provoke him, waiting for him to react the way he always did. But when he didn't, something shifted. She realized she no longer had control over him. And David? He felt stronger, freer, and more dignified than ever before. So how do you use silence to protect your dignity? First, resist the urge to explain yourself to people who've already made up their minds. You don't owe anyone a defense of your worth. Second, stop chasing. If someone wants to walk away, let them. The right people will never need to be begged to stay. And third, understand that silence speaks volumes. Your calm withdrawal is louder than any words of protest because it shows that your peace cannot be shaken. At the end of the day, silence isn't empty, it's full of meaning. When you choose silence over chasing, begging, or explaining, you declare to the world, "I know my worth." And the moment you make that choice, you reclaim your dignity, your strength, and your peace. Your silence becomes your superpower. Number 2, silence exposes the truth. Let's talk about one of the most liberating lessons silence teaches you. It reveals who truly values you. When you stop chasing, stop begging, and stop over-explaining yourself, something interesting happens. The people who genuinely care will step forward on their own, while the ones who never valued you will fade into the background. And that contrast? That's the truth, clearer than any words could ever show. Here's the truth. If someone values you, they'll make an effort. If they don't, their absence is your answer. Silence removes the guessing game. You don't have to wonder how much you mean to someone when your withdrawal shows you exactly where you stand. Because genuine love, respect, and loyalty don't vanish just because you stop pushing. If a connection is real, it will survive the silence. But if it's built only on your effort, it will collapse the moment you stop. And as painful as that realization may be, it's also the most freeing. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Epictetus said, "Time reveals character more than words ever will. Words are easy. Promises are easy. Excuses are easy. But silence over time shows you the truth of someone's character. If they step forward, it means you matter. If they disappear, it means they never did. Instead of begging for clarity, let silence provide it. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Amanda, was always the one holding her friendships together. She checked in, made plans, remembered birthdays, but one day she decided to stop, not out of anger, but out of exhaustion. She simply went quiet. At first, she expected her phone to light up with messages, but days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. Out of a group of 10 close friends, only 2 reached out to ask how she was. The rest? Silence. And that was all Amanda needed to know. The ones who truly valued her made the effort. The others only valued what she gave, not who she was. So how do you use silence to expose the truth? First, stop chasing clarity. If you have to force someone to show up, they're not really showing up. Second, step back and observe. People's actions in your silence will tell you more than their words ever could. And third, accept the truth with dignity. It may sting when some people don't step forward, but that pain is better than living in a lie. At the end of the day, silence isn't about punishing others, it's about revealing reality. The people meant for you won't disappear when you stop speaking, they'll draw closer. And those who vanish? They were never really yours. That's the beauty of silence. It exposes the truth you need to see, and once you see it, you'll never waste your energy on the wrong people again. Number 3, silence stops manipulation. Let's talk about one of the smartest ways silence protects you. It shuts down manipulators. People who thrive on control know that words are their greatest weapon. They twist your explanations, use your defenses against you, and keep you trapped in endless cycles of proving yourself. Every time you try to justify or defend, you hand them more material to use against you. But when you stay silent, suddenly their entire strategy collapses. They can't twist what you don't say. Here's the truth. Explanations are tools in the hands of manipulators. The more you talk, the more they gain. They're not looking for clarity. They're looking for leverage. If they can get you flustered, apologizing, or over-defending, they've already won. But when you stop giving them that fuel, they lose their grip. Silence creates a boundary that words can't cross. It tells them, "I'm not playing this game anymore." This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Epictetus said, "The more you defend yourself, the more you surrender." Think about that. Every defense, every explanation, every attempt to justify yourself is actually giving your power away. The Stoics remind us that we don't need to prove our worth to anyone, especially not to those who deliberately misunderstand us. By refusing to explain endlessly, you protect your peace and hold your ground. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Jessica, had a boss who constantly manipulated her. Whenever she made a mistake, even a small one, he would exaggerate it and force her into long explanations. If she tried to defend herself, he'd interrupt, twist her words, and make her feel even more guilty. Jessica always left those conversations feeling defeated, even when she hadn't done anything wrong. One day, she decided to try something different. When her boss accused her unfairly, she simply looked at him, stayed calm, and didn't argue, just silence. At first, he kept pushing, trying to bait her into defending herself. But when she didn't, the tension shifted. He had nothing left to twist. And for the first time, Jessica walked away from that interaction with her dignity intact. So, how do you use silence to stop manipulation? First, recognize when someone is baiting you. If their questions aren't genuine, don't answer them as if they are. Second, resist the urge to over-explain. A calm silence often says more than 1,000 defenses. And third, let silence become your boundary. It signals to manipulators that you're no longer available for their games. At the end of the day, silence doesn't just protect you, it exposes them. Manipulators can only control those who keep feeding them words. When you choose silence, you take away their power, and they're forced to confront their own behavior without your participation. That's why silence is not surrender, it's mastery. Your refusal to defend endlessly is the loudest declaration of strength you can make. If you've watched the video this far, don't forget to leave a comment with a "thank God" and give it a like if you enjoyed the content. Your support means a lot and motivates me to keep creating more interesting videos. I hope you find inspiration in them and that we continue learning together. Thank you for your support. Number 4, silence protects your energy. Let's talk about one of the most practical benefits of silence. It protects your energy. Every time you chase, beg, or over-explain, you're spending energy that could be invested in yourself. It feels draining, doesn't it? You pour your strength into trying to convince others of your worth, into chasing relationships, or into proving yourself to people who don't even care. But here's the thing. That energy was never meant for them. It was meant for you. Here's the truth. Chasing drains your spirit. Every unanswered text, every ignored effort, every time you explain yourself to deaf ears, it chips away at your peace. And the more you chase, the weaker you feel. Silence, on the other hand, is the opposite. It's like a quiet fortress. By creating distance, you're pulling your energy back where it belongs, with you. You're no longer bleeding strength into people who don't value it. Instead, you're storing it, strengthening it, and using it for your own growth. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Marcus Aurelius said, "Do not waste what remains of your life on others' agendas." Think about how much time and energy is wasted chasing people who don't want to be caught, explaining yourself to those who don't want to understand, or trying to fix those who don't want to change. Every ounce of energy you spend on that is energy stolen from your own purpose. The Stoics remind us, life is short, don't waste it on distractions. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him Brian, used to be the kind of person who gave and gave until he had nothing left. If a friend needed help, he was there. If a co-worker needed extra work done, he'd volunteer. If someone ignored him, he'd chase harder, trying to earn their attention. But over time, Brian started feeling exhausted. No matter how much he gave, it was never enough. Then one day, after being ignored by a group he thought were his friends, he decided to stop. He didn't argue. He didn't chase. He simply went silent. At first it felt strange, like he was quitting. But soon, he realized something powerful. His energy was returning. He started using that time and strength on himself, on his health, his passions, his own goals. And within months, he was happier, calmer, and stronger than he'd been in years. So how do you use silence to protect your energy? First, notice where your energy goes. If you're constantly drained after dealing with someone, that's a sign. Second, pull back without guilt. Protecting your peace is not selfish, it's necessary. Third, reinvest in yourself. Use the energy you once wasted chasing others to build your own life, your own growth, and your own joy. At the end of the day, silence is not just the absence of words, it's the presence of strength. When you stop chasing and begging, you stop leaking energy into the wrong places. You reclaim your spirit. You take back your strength. And in that quiet distance, you discover just how powerful and unshakable you really are. Number 5. Silence makes others reveal themselves. Let's talk about one of the most underrated powers of silence. It makes people show you who they really are. When you stop reacting, stop explaining, and stop trying to fill the space with words, something fascinating happens. Other people start to reveal their true intentions. Your stillness forces their mask to slip, because they can no longer rely on your reactions to guide them. Here's the truth. When you don't react, you remove their control. Most people are used to manipulating situations by how others respond. They test your limits, they push your buttons, and they feed off your reactions. But when you stay calm and silent, they're left with nothing to work with. That's when the truth comes out. If their respect for you is genuine, it will show. If their motives are selfish, that will show too. Silence is like a mirror. It reflects back exactly who they are. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Seneca once said, "Silence is sometimes the most powerful answer." And he was right. Words can be twisted, but silence cannot. It forces people to confront themselves without distraction. Your silence becomes a test, and how they respond tells you everything you need to know. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him Michael, was in a business partnership where he always felt uneasy. His partner talked a big game, made promises, and seemed charming to everyone else. But Michael noticed inconsistencies. Things didn't always add up. Instead of confronting him right away, Michael decided to pull back. He stopped over-explaining his decisions, stopped reacting to every provocation, and simply stayed quiet. Within weeks, his partner's mask began to slip. He grew frustrated, impatient, and eventually revealed his true intentions. He wasn't interested in building the business together. He was only interested in using Michael's resources for his own gain. Michael's silence exposed what words never could. So how do you use silence to make others reveal themselves? First, stop rushing to react. Give space and watch what people do when you don't respond. Second, observe carefully. Pay attention to their actions, not their words. Silence will show you both. And third, trust what's revealed. If someone disappears when you go quiet, let them. If they grow angry at your calmness, that tells you something too. At the end of the day, silence isn't just about peace, it's about clarity. The way people behave in your silence tells you more than their words ever will. Some will reveal loyalty, some will reveal selfishness, and some will reveal nothing at all, which is an answer in itself. That's the beauty of silence. It doesn't just protect you, it uncovers the truth about everyone else. If you found this valuable, hit like and subscribe for more powerful insights. Number 6. Silence keeps you in control. Let's talk about one of the greatest strengths silence gives you. It keeps you in control. You can't control other people, their choices, their words, their behavior, but you can control yourself. And when you choose silence over reaction, you take back power they might have tried to claim over you. Calmness is power, because it shows that no one else can dictate your emotions. Here's the truth. You can't control others, but silence ensures they can't control you. People often test you to see how much of your peace they can disturb. They throw insults, provoke arguments, or push your buttons just to get a reaction. The moment you explode, explain, or defend endlessly, you hand them control. But silence flips the script. When you stay calm, when you refuse to play the game, you remind them, and yourself, that you are the master of your emotions. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Freedom isn't about controlling others. It's about not letting them control you. When you practice silence, you're exercising mastery over your own mind. You're showing that your dignity, your peace, and your sense of worth are not up for negotiation. Silence is not weakness, it's command. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him Daniel, had a co-worker who always tried to provoke him. Every meeting, this co-worker would make sly remarks, hoping Daniel would lash out and look unprofessional. At first, Daniel fell into the trap. He argued, explained, and defended himself, only to leave the meetings drained and frustrated. But then he tried something new. The next time his co-worker made a jab, Daniel stayed silent. He kept calm, kept his composure, and simply didn't take the bait. The co-worker pushed harder, but Daniel never flinched. Slowly, the co-worker realized he had no power anymore. And soon, he stopped trying altogether. Daniel had regained control, not by shouting louder, but by refusing to play the game. So how do you use silence to stay in control? First, notice when someone is baiting you. Their goal is to get a reaction. Don't give it to them. Second, anchor yourself in calmness. A steady silence is more powerful than a storm of words. And third, remember that silence is a choice. Every time you choose silence over reaction, you're choosing mastery over chaos. At the end of the day, silence is the highest form of control. It proves that no one else decides your peace of mind but you. Calmness isn't passive, it's powerful. When you choose silence, you stand tall, unshaken, and unbroken. And in a noisy world where everyone is trying to pull your strings, that kind of control is the ultimate superpower. Number 7. Silence builds self-respect. Let's talk about one of the deepest transformations silence creates. It rebuilds your self-respect. When you stop explaining yourself to those who misunderstand you, when you stop begging for attention, and when you stop chasing people who don't value you, something powerful happens. You reclaim your worth. You begin to see that respect starts with you, and it begins the moment desperation ends. Here's the truth. The more you chase, the more you diminish your own value. Every time you beg for someone to stay, or over-explain to convince them of your worth, you're silently telling yourself, "I'm not enough on my own." But when you choose silence, you break that cycle. You're no longer seeking permission to exist in someone else's life. You're affirming that your place in the world isn't dependent on their approval. Silence is self-respect in action. It says, "I don't need to prove myself to anyone who doesn't already see my value." This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A man's worth is measured by what he values in himself." The Stoics remind us that respect is an inside job. If you measure yourself by the opinions of others, your worth will rise and fall with their moods. But when you value yourself, your time, your energy, your dignity, you become unshakable. Self-respect grows every time you choose silence over desperation. Let me share a story. A young woman I know, let's call her Emily, used to exhaust herself in relationships. She'd text first, over and over, even when the replies came late or not at all. She'd apologize for things that weren't her fault, just to keep the peace. She'd explain endlessly when she was misunderstood, desperate to be seen clearly. But one day, after a particularly painful argument where she felt invisible despite her pleading, Emily made a decision. She went silent. No chasing, no explaining. Just calm withdrawal. At first, the silence felt heavy, but soon she felt something new. Peace. For the first time, she realized she didn't need to beg anyone to value her. That was her responsibility. And the moment she embraced silence, her self-respect began to rebuild piece by piece. So how do you let silence build your self-respect? First, stop over-explaining. If someone refuses to understand you, let them sit with their own confusion. Second, refuse to beg. Respect doesn't come from lowering yourself. It comes from standing tall in your worth. Third, protect your dignity. Your silence is proof that you won't sell your self-respect for temporary validation. At the end of the day, silence isn't emptiness, it's alignment. Every time you choose silence over chasing, begging, or explaining, you're reminding yourself, "I am enough." And the more you practice it, the more your self-respect grows. Because true respect doesn't begin when others honor you, it begins the moment you decide to honor yourself. If you believe this video can help others, give it a like. It helps the YouTube algorithm show it to more people. And don't forget to subscribe for more awesome content coming your way. Share your thoughts in the comments. I will definitely reply. Number 8. Silence attracts respect and fear. Let's talk about one of the most striking effects of silence. It makes people rethink how they see you. Most expect weakness when you go quiet. They expect you to beg, chase, or defend yourself. But when you don't, when you hold steady, calm, and unshaken, that silence unsettles them. It makes them recalculate. It forces them to look at you differently, with respect, and sometimes even with fear. Here's the truth. Your silence unsettles those who expect you to break. People who rely on control or manipulation thrive on your reactions. They count on your anger, your defense, or your desperation. But when you don't give them any of that, they're forced to face something uncomfortable, your strength. Silence is power because it says, "I don't need to prove myself to you," and that message is far louder than any argument could ever be. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Marcus Aurelius said, "He who cannot be provoked holds the highest power. Think about that. If no one can push you off balance, you've already won. Silence makes you untouchable because it shows you're not ruled by impulse or by others' expectations. Instead, you're in command of yourself, and that kind of composure demands respect. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him Stephen, worked in a competitive office where people often tried to get under each other's skin. One co-worker, in particular, always targeted him with sarcastic remarks during meetings, waiting for him to snap. Stephen used to respond, arguing back, defending himself, proving his point. But it only fueled the behavior. Then one day, Stephen decided to stop. When the co-worker mocked him again, Stephen said nothing. He just looked at him calmly and stayed silent. The room grew tense. Everyone waited for Stephen's reaction, but it never came. That silence hit harder than any comeback. Over time, the sarcastic remarks stopped because the co-worker realized he couldn't control Stephen anymore. Instead of mocking him, people began respecting him more, for his composure, for his calm, for his strength. So how do you use silence to attract respect? First, master your emotions. If someone tries to provoke you, don't give them what they want. Second, let silence become your shield. It speaks volumes about your self-control. Third, allow others to feel the weight of your calmness. Silence creates space that forces people to reflect on their own behavior. At the end of the day, silence isn't just the absence of words, it's the presence of authority. When you cannot be provoked, you become unshakable. And when you're unshakable, people respect you, even fear you. Your silence makes them rethink how they treat you, because they realize they can't play games with someone who refuses to play at all. That's the essence of power, the kind that doesn't need to shout to be heard. If you found this valuable, hit like and subscribe for more powerful insights.